No, not playing last year sucked, to be honest with you. It wasn't good not playing last year, but at the end of the day, it's now. The time is now. And last year is last year, and all that's over, and it's about right now.
It was just one of those things, put a little extra emphasis on the game because, you come to Michigan to play Ohio State, you come to Michigan for big games like this, and it was just a little extra emphasis. We just renamed one of our drills and, really just wanted to up the physicality, knowing that this game's physical as they come in all aspects of football. So just that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, we got to cover, and we got to get to the passer when it comes to the passing game. The weapons they have in the running game are very good too, and we've got to get off blocks. We've got to tackle and know that we got to get some stops. And you're not gonna stop them every series. They're going to score points. They're going to move the football, and then it's going to be the offense's job to respond, drive the ball, get points of our own. Special teams will play a key role in determining field position and maybe chip in with a score too. Maybe the defense chips in with a score. I mean, we're going to have to answer their ability to put points on the board ourselves.
You don't even know. You don't even know how much that would mean to me, and especially being at the big house this year, just being able to celebrate it in my home. I mean, it would mean the world.
All right, welcome in to this afternoon live on Tuesday, November the 23rd. I'm Dennis Fithian. I'm ready to go. Talk about what's going on with Michigan and Ohio State. Should be pretty fired up if you're out there and you're a college football fan, a Michigan fan. Big game coming up on Saturday. I'll talk about the game plan for success and just what a win would do. What a win would do for the Wolverines. And if it's been a good season already, we'll touch on that. And we'll get to some wild cards as well. The Memorabilia Minute and the Michigan Recruiting Spotlight promises to be a dandy today because we have the recruiting editor of TMBR who is joining us right now. And there you see him on the screen, and it is Brandon Justice. And we tell him, good afternoon. What's going on, Brandon?
How we doing?
You know what? It's the calm before the storm, trying to just, take things and enjoy the day until we get to Saturday. There's no reason to speed it up. I mean, we got Thanksgiving to deal with, got Black Friday before it kicks off at noon. So, and we got today. So let's enjoy it. Let's not speed everything up and, stop and smell the roses for a couple seconds here. What do you think?
Yeah, we got quite a few events in between here and Saturday, which is kind of hard to keep up with given the magnitude of Saturday's game. And obviously, we've been lucky enough to be in a season where
it matters a lot. I just noticed my mic was on wrong, so I fixed that for you.
Sounds good. I was going to say, you know what, you were sounded fine, but then it kicked in. I was like, whoa.
So yeah, there's a lot going on between now and then. I got a couple Thanksgivings I got to go to on Wednesday and Thursday. I've got some various recruiting things to do in between, from a work perspective. So quite a few things going on between now and then. So, hold your horses. Also, I'm happy to share that No Shave November ends for me today because it was the last day of school. So this will no longer be here. It just doesn't work for me, Dennis. It just doesn't work for me. I'm 25, but I have the facial hair of a 13-year-old. So,
well, you know what? You're doing it for a good cause. I mean, that's right. What it's all about. I was watching the Manning cast last night. They showed Peyton Manning with a goatee, and they had Julian Edelman on there. He has one of those gigantic lumberjack beards, and they were showing Peyton back when he was at the Colts, and it just wasn't there for him, but that's all right. Maybe when you get older, it'll happen for you. That's all right. I keep thinking about, sure, all these things that are going on, but I keep coming back to a game plan for success. Like Michigan's got a shot in this game on Saturday. I don't think anybody's going in and said, absolutely, they've got zero chance. But if they are going to succeed in beating Ohio State, what do you think the game plan will look like for success for the Maize and Blue?
I honestly, and this might sound psycho, but I think it's a little bit of a dynamic game plan where you're going to have to adjust in game based on how things are going. And unfortunately, you might have to allow Ohio State to dictate that in the end. You may not have to, but in my opinion, it's one of those things where Michigan can stick to its identity of playing possession football and sustaining long drives, because the longer that offense is out there, the better it is for that defense that has to go up against Ohio State's more powerful, fast of the game, which is their offense, right? So, in theory, if Michigan can get the ball first and sustain a 5 or 6 minute drive or less or more, give or take, then that's perfect for them, right? But if Ohio State goes out there and does what it does last week, where they immediately score, you're going to have to answer. You're going to have to stop the bleeding. I think the other side of it is, some keys to the game would just be to hold Ohio State to as many field goals as you can. Bend, don't break. You're not going to be able to stop this. You're not going to be able to go out there with the mentality to attack with aggression. A little bit of a throwback to Don Brown there. You're not going to be able to do that against an offense like this. You're going to have to bend and not break, and you're going to have to give up some points and be okay with it and have the mentality to go back out there the next drive, right? Because you can't slippery slope with this team. We saw that last weekend. So I think Michigan really, in a perfect world, gets the ball first or has an opportunity to get the ball first. And even if they're down 7-0, if they have to sustain a long drive to open this game, if they don't sustain a long drive, whether they're down, up, or tied to open this game, then, there might be some floodgates opening for Ohio State's offense. And if Michigan can, at that point, Michigan will have to, like I said, dynamic game plan, have to respond with something of their own offensively, which, again, they've proven they're able to do. This offense is far more dangerous than the one in 2016. I think it's more dangerous than the one with Shea Patterson in 2018, with credit to their running backs and their offensive line being, I think, lengths better than the one in 18. So that's honestly how I see the game plan working out, is if you can go out there and sustain long drives, then perfect. But if you can't, do you have the offensive firepower to not keep up? Because I do think this defense is going to get more stops than Michigan State's. Nebraska got some stops on this defense in a road environment. So I don't think it's impossible. I think that the recency of everything that went on with Michigan State last week, given, Michigan State's prowess this year, is obviously dictating how people are calling this game to go on. But don't forget about the season. It's a season-long affair. There's been defenses that have slowed them down, and Michigan's defense is as good as any they faced. So, like I said, I just think it's kind of a dynamic game plan.
Congratulations, by the way, to Don Brown for getting a head coach position at UMass. And, you're a little braver than I am, bringing up 2018 and everything. I'm not ready to go there. It brings up too many bad memories. I do see Antoine here, some feedback right off the bat, says if you take a look at that Oregon game, Oregon's biggest success was the running back catching the ball out of the backfield and running the ball on the outside. Well, Antoine, let's ask Brandon. Michigan has, I don't know, Hassan Haskins is going to be the feature back, but Michigan has two, I'm going to say, wild cards in Blake Corum coming out of the backfield. Now, we know that he dropped one against Michigan State. He dropped one also in the game that he got hurt. That was against Indiana, right, where he was coming out there. And we just saw a guy coming out of the backfield wearing number 7, the true freshman Donovan Edwards, and he looked pretty good doing that. So I would imagine throwing the ball to the backfield a little bit to one or two of those guys would be in the game plan here for Josh Gaddis, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Hart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Anton makes a great point there, because CJ Verdrell, who unfortunately is hurt now, but at the time had a fantastic game and really carried Oregon's offense to that victory and kept them in a space to win. The quarterback didn't play that great for Oregon that day. He missed a lot of good throws, a lot of open targets. He played good enough to win, obviously, but the Verdell was the big key for them. And I think that he makes a great point. That being said, if we really want to go off recency with this game, then Donovan Edwards had his coming out party last week. So if Blake Corum can be more consistent with his hands in this game, then yeah, I'll probably take Blake Corum in a draft over Donovan Edwards right now. When it comes to, like, if we're just drafting players who can make an impact in this game, then sure, I'll probably still at this point take Corum over Edwards, not by much. But the beauty is you have all three. You have Haskins you can hand off to as the feature back, like you said. You have Corum who can take those, third down handoffs or anything of that nature. He can spell Haskins like he has all year, right? And then you have Edwards who can come in and be your lightning ball out of the backfield. And I think that Ohio State's defense has weaknesses, and those weaknesses are tackling guys in open space. I don't think that they're as sound of a tackling team that they're being made out to be, to a degree where if Michigan has 5-10 yards of space to work with, I think that Michigan's going to win a lot of those one-on-one battles in the open field. That being said, I also think Ohio State, conversely, would win a lot of those on their offensive side. And that's why I think this game's probably going to have a lot of points in it. Not to the degree that Michigan State and Ohio State did, but this seems like a 34-28, 34-30 type of game, because I do think that these offenses are both dynamic. In years past, Ohio State's always waltzed in with the dynamic offense, and Michigan's always had the really strong defense, and Ohio State's defense has been a little bit weaker, besides 2016, where you saw two really good defenses go in and you saw two okay offenses go at it. Those teams were very comparable, and that's why you saw that game go to overtime, and that's why you saw the two teams so evenly matched. In this game, I think Michigan has a slight edge defensively, and I think Ohio State has a more sizable edge offensively. But, Ohio State's defense is no slouch this year. Michigan's defense is obviously, put on what it's done as far as, and it's been well documented what they've done. So it just comes down to whose stars can be stars, right? Your big players have to make big plays in this game. It's very simple, right? Like, that sounds so elementary to say, but it's look back on the games that Michigan's won in this rivalry and think about the players who have come. I mean, hey, how many times have we seen the Heisman post today from Desmond Howard since it was this day, however many years ago that was, right? That's a big player making a big play in a big game. And that's when Michigan's won these things, is when they have those players doing that. Michigan State in 2018, you're supposed to roll over that state team. That state team was bad, but Michigan was in a battle, and who made a big play? Donovan Peoples-Jones. Did he make a ton of big plays at Michigan? No. But when he did, it was a game like that against Michigan State. So your stars have to make plays. Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo have to be huge in this game. Now, to Antoine's point, Corum has to be more consistent with his hands in this game, because this is a great way that you can beat this Ohio State team. All right, same thing goes for Donovan Edwards. If he can give half of what he did last week in a game like this, then you're happy with it, right? So I think, honestly, it all comes down to what he said. There's certain spots in this game that you need plays to be made. And not to ramble, but I want to make one last point about that. We've seen a lot with that Michigan, Ohio State, whichever one was at home. I think it was the 2017 game when John O'Corn was at quarterback. So the 2017 game, Harbaugh coached the hell out of that game. He did a really good. They drew up a really good game plan. So credit to him, credit to Pep Hamilton. They were very limited with that offense that year, but they were in it until the end. And you watch that last play where O'Corn overshoots Evans, and it's picked off. Evans catches that. He's probably going to the grip. And Michigan at this point could have this one singular win over Ohio State. So it's one of those things where Michigan has given its players opportunities to execute in this game, and it just hasn't happened. And if they can get that this team, as we've said all year, seems far different than any team before it, whether it be the staff and like the revamped staff, whether it be just the attitude of these players being sick of, what's come before them, with getting so close and never, being able to capitalize. A lot of things are different about this team than teams of the past. Are they like unequivocally more talented? No. Mentally, they are built different, though, and I will give them credit for that. And I think that's something that if you're a Michigan fan, you're leaning on going into Saturday, is that making a difference.
A lot of good things there from Brandon Justice, the recruiting editor at TMBR. The thing you said about the big players making the big plays in the big games here. Michigan was touting Aiden Hutchinson about, getting him to New York and everything. And last week, CJ Stroud had such a fantastic game against Michigan State. He threw Kenneth Walker maybe out of New York and put himself up there at number one. But if Aiden Hutchinson wants to go out there and create havoc and strip sack and fall on one in the end zone and not get it overturned, and maybe he can be in New York and come up and Michigan wins this game. Before I ask you about just what a win would do for you, for Michigan, for recruiting and everything else, Gary Danielson, I was just listening to the CBS color analyst on Sirius XM, and he was asked, I'm a little surprised, but here's what Gary Danielson had to say, courtesy of Sirius XM radio.
I think this is a really good Michigan football team. I think this is a team. I feel like they're due. I just do. I said it to you before. I thought that, this team had enough offense, a quarterback that's competitive. I mean, I got to see that Ohio State debacle with Michigan State while we were in the booth, and holy cow, I mean, that offense was unbelievable. The talent they had. So I mean, can Michigan put their athletes? Can they rush enough? I mean, we've seen Ohio State where they look unbeatable, and then you go, wait, what happened? But C.J. Stroud and the way they're playing right now, there's nobody better, right? In college football. So I don't know. That Michigan, I just got a feeling this is the year. I just have a feeling this is the year.
All right, there he is. He's got a feeling this is their year, and he thinks they're due. I don't know, but and then all of the analysis in the middle of that was just how great Ohio State is. But on the ends there, he thinks they're due, and he just thinks it's their year. I don't know what you make of that soundbite there, Brandon.
Well, I think they're certainly due. I think we can all agree on that. I think we've been saying that for a few years now. So I don't think being due has anything to do with Michigan winning or not winning this weekend. I think they know that, and I think everyone in that building knows that. And anyone who thinks that even though Harbaugh's losses against Ohio State have happened, they haven't happened because he's gone out there and said, hey, well, you know what? This game doesn't mean much, right? So, all those things can be thrown out. What I do think he makes a good point in is that, this year is different because the offense is a little bit more dangerous than years past. And does this offense have the flash and the glitz and glamour? No, they're not. Shea Patterson is not out there. I think you would, on paper, maybe even with your eyes, you might think that you'd rather have Shea Patterson as the quarterback of this team rather than Cade McNamara. But what Cade McNamara gives you is a guy who is going to work this system to the best of its ability. He's not going to force anything. He's going to do everything exactly by the book. And whether you like that or not, and whether that pushes the needle for you or not, it's something that Michigan as a staff and as a team obviously has bought into, and it's led them to a 10-1 season. So whether or not you're really into it or not, it's led to a season that's been far more successful than any season since 2016, right? And it's put them in a position to where they're in that same spot, except not only do they have a better offense than they did in 16 with Wilden Spate and with like the guy, I think that the receiver is probably not as good as like a Jehu Chesson or anything because they just don't have the experience. You'd love to have Ronnie Bell, but they're more athletic. You have better speed threats here. You have better deep threats here. You've got better Eric All as a tight end taking an underneath route, 50 yards to win a game against Penn. You didn't have that in 2016. So offensively speaking, yes, Michigan has more, but the bigger advantage here is they also have home field, right? That 2016 team, a better defense, yes, had to travel to Columbus. And, that home field advantage is very much so a thing, especially when it comes to these two teams. Michigan Stadium, an enormous amount of credit needs to be given to stadiums. I don't know who is in charge of this, but fan relations in some way. It's a totally different experience at Michigan Stadium this year than it has been in the past, where they're really honed in on targeting the fans to give more, right? To stand up and to be louder and to really make it an advantage. You see the team has fun. The team is doing all sorts of things it's never done before, dancing to songs and in between third and fourth quarter and whole benches jumping. It's very energetic, right? And that feeds into the crowd as well. They have these graphics that show on the screen now where players are talking to you, telling you to get up. So the stadium and its employees have done a very good job of making Michigan Stadium a tough place to play, because we've seen it in years past be a quieter type of place. It's a place where you don't really fear going. We've heard teams say that. Even though they have the most fans, it hasn't been the most raucous. And I think this year, we've seen it in the Washington game. That place was crazy. And then aside from that, the tough games they've had to play this year were all on the road. Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State, all on the road. This is the game for this crowd, and this is the game for this fan base for many reasons beyond it just being a home game. But this is the only big home game this crowd has had since week 2, which wasn't even a big game in the long run anyway. So I think that plays into it. Michigan, C.J. Stroud has not been in an environment like this. The only environment that compares to it is Nebraska earlier this year, and they struggled against Nebraska. So I think that there's a few things playing into their favor in comparison to the past, right? So Danielson squeezed in a bunch of info about Stroud. All true. But there are still some things that could play into Michigan's hand here.
Yeah, you know what? People were hopeful in Harbaugh's first year in 2015. That game was at home, but I don't think many people thought they were going to win that one. But in 17, you talked about John O'Corney could have been a hero. But 19 wasn't all that close, but you do have the 16 and 18. They were down in Columbus. This one right here at the Big House. So the crowd definitely can be a factor. I want to know what a win would do for you. It's kind of a three-parter. You, for the Michigan program, for recruiting, those three things, what it would do for Michigan, what it would do for you.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if Michigan wins that game on Saturday, I'm going to have to immediately hit the phone and just start, messaging all the recruits. So, what's up? Like, where are we going now? What's the move? Because that changes things, man. Like, I put in the Justice Report, and if you're watching this and you don't know what it is, the Justice Report is every week. Usually Sunday. I had to do Monday this week just because I was gathering some more notes for it, which was worth the wait, I think. So, the Justice Report is basically a long compilation of a bunch of recruiting news and just thoughts I have, kind of like a blog format, really. And in this week's Justice Report, I talked about the seismic shift this could provide Michigan in recruiting for the long term. And will it have a seismic shift on college football? Absolutely, because somebody will finally dethrone one of these, bigger teams, right? It's besides Michigan State in 2015, the only representative from the Big Ten in the college football playoff has been Ohio State. Like Penn State made it to that Big Ten championship a few years back, but where was Ohio State at? The college football playoff in 2016, right? So, this would finally be an opportunity for the Big Ten to have another, flagship program. College football would now be on lookout as far as a new program to look for outside of those blue bloods. Obviously, without Clemson this year, there is a spot for someone to step up. People think it's going to be Cincinnati. People think at this point it could be Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. But what if it's Michigan, right? So the big thing here, and I'll use a specific example for it as far as recruiting goes, is 5-star Damani Jackson, cornerback out of Mater Dei. He's going to be in attendance on Saturday. That's been well documented. We all know that. His recruitment has been, it's very comparable to Najee Harris's recruitment, where he's like, okay, he's not going to go to the school he's committed to, right? Which is a little different because Najee was committed to Alabama for as long as he was. We all knew he wasn't going to go to USC. There was like this afterthought that maybe the whole Dante Williams situation would work out to where he'd stay there. It wasn't going to happen, right? Goes to visit Alabama, decommits from USC. That's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think there's like 8 future casts in on him to go to Alabama. Everyone's thinking it's Alabama. Everyone, right? But Michigan does get the last dance. Right? Michigan gets the last dance. Michigan gets to have the last conversation in person. Michigan gets that opportunity. Now, there's going to be some in-house visits and all that when the time comes, but if he's going to sign December 15th, this is crunch time, and this is an opportunity for Michigan to do something really special because recruits nationally have all said, look, we love Coach Harbaugh. Michigan recruits very well, and we're into the Big House. We're into the visits. We like going to Michigan, but they just can't win these big games, and we want to see that happen, and you can't blame them for wanting to see that. So with that being said, well, here you go. You want to talk about an opportunity. You have a 5-star cornerback who's been interested in your school through the thick and thin from the jump, never committed to it because of, the lack thereof of being able to be a complete product. Now you have an opportunity to not only beat Ohio State before he makes his commitment, but beat Ohio State with not only him there, but his dad, who's a longtime Michigan fan. It's an opportunity. Doesn't come very often for Michigan with these top 5 guys as much as it used to because of just the lack of success they've had from a top 5-10 level, right? So with Jackson in attendance, his buddy Will Johnson, 5-star cornerback commit from Grosse Pointe South, who's committed to Michigan, will be there. Michigan's got, they've got a nice little NIL thing coming for him too, and for Johnson as well. And I think they have this crazy opportunity to land 2 5-star cornerbacks who can become generational talents for them at the cornerback position. They could start as soon as, freshman, sophomore year. Who knows? Who knows how much they like, Vincent Gray and how much they like Jamon Green in comparison to these guys. But these are guys who are going to start sooner than later wherever they go, whether it be Alabama or Michigan. So I think if Michigan beats Ohio State, all of a sudden, what's the more likely scenario? Alabama to beat Georgia? Or Michigan to beat Wisconsin in a Big Ten championship? I'm going to take Michigan over Wisconsin as the more likely money line there. And so with that being said, all of a sudden Michigan's like, hey, we got a better shot at the playoff this year than Alabama. And we don't even have the recruiting class that we think can change this whole thing, which is yours. Whether they believe that or not is one thing. They can say it. Okay. You guys, you and Will are the two that are going to come in here and be our shutdown pass defense. You see what our defensive line can do. You know what our linebackers can do. We need 2 shutdown corners to shut down Ohio State's quarterbacks every year for us, and we'll keep this train rolling. They have a perfect opportunity to beat Ohio State for many reasons beyond recruiting, right? This is a long time coming. We talked about them being due at the beginning of the show. That's all true. But from a recruiting standpoint, it can be a seismic shift because now they can finally have some sort of upper hand on Ohio State when it comes to recruiting, because having to recruit against a team that bullies you for a whole decade is not ideal. It's not optimal, to say the least. So with that being said, if they can pull this off on Saturday from a recruiting standpoint, it elevates things to a whole new level. First thing I'm doing is calling a bunch of people, figuring out, okay, what's the vibe like? What are we thinking now? And then we'll see that aftermath. Will Damani all of a sudden be a Michigan guy? Will there be this, that, and the other thing? A lot of things have to happen in order for that to happen. But it would be a seismic shift for sure.
Yeah, I like the picture you're painting, and it reminded me a little bit yesterday, and I know it's baseball and we're talking about college football, but, the Tigers brought in Eduardo Rodriguez, who they signed, and, Chris Ilitch, their owner, was there, and AJ Hinch, their manager, and they were talking about Eduardo and everything, but things quickly shifted to Carlos Correa and like, hey, are you going to be able to afford Carlos Correa and $300 million? And what did you have for breakfast and everything else? And when you mentioned name, image, and likeness, the idea that Saturday that Michigan could win the game and that also the Wolverines could be breaking out some kind of monumental package, or making it an offer that Damani can't refuse. And we never could talk about this before, like, yeah, Alabama can come to the table and they can promise them anything. Michigan, it's like, you got the guy in Ann Arbor. Don't let him leave, without a suitcase or whatever it's going to take, to get him to pledge to the Wolverines. I don't know. Like, that was me, crossing sports and everything else. But how important do you think the presentation is going to be to Damani Jackson about, hey, this is what Michigan can offer you in terms of making money off your name and image or likeness?
Honestly, from an individual standpoint, I think that Damani is going to go where he thinks he's going to succeed most on the football field, and anything to do with an NIL is just a nice little added bonus. That being said, I don't know the extent of what this NIL is going to become at its ceiling, right? At its ceiling. Now, I know it's going to be lucrative. I know it's going to be something that's going to be worth his while by a long run. But to think that Alabama doesn't have something similar would be crazy, right? Now, Michigan's alumni network is probably the strongest in college football, or at least one of the strongest. And you'd have to believe that guys like Stephen Ross existing in this world, would be a part of a program that, or a package, or would be okay fronting for these packages to make something happen like this for Michigan football, right? So, it's one of those things where Michigan has all the resources, and I think they're going to deliver. By far, I think they're going to deliver. But then at the end of the day, to a guy like Damani, who is some are calling a surefire first-round pick as a cornerback out of college, projects to be, and you're just kind of wondering, like, what is it going to take to outweigh that Alabama offer? Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, I really think he wants to see Michigan jump that line and beat Ohio State. He just wants to, I think, like a lot of us, he just wants to see Michigan legitimize itself, right? And you can't blame him for wanting that. So from an NIL perspective, I think absolutely Michigan's going to come in with something lucrative that's not only going to be worth his time, it's going to be beyond that. And it's probably going to be better than Alabama's offer initially. Doesn't mean Alabama can't come back with something better. Welcome to the new days of recruiting that really, for some places, aren't that new. So it's going to be interesting. But I do think that the ultimatum here, the one thing that's going to lock the gates and allow you to keep Damani in there, right? You say you don't want him to leave without a suitcase, right? So what's really going to lock the gates and keep him in the building until he says, yep, I'm going to go to Michigan,
handcuffs,
is a win. I think it's a win. I think it's a win in a briefcase. A win in a briefcase, and whatever. It's theoretically, right? They're obviously not doing that. I don't want to get clipped and sent to whomever, but
I was listening to it was Dan Wetzel from Yahoo was talking about Matt Ishbia, who played basketball at Michigan State as a walk-on, and now he's a billionaire. And Dan, I didn't know this. He said that Ishbia was interested in buying the Lions, but that's not happening because the Fords are never going to sell because they just love the Lions because they've had so much success and everything else. But he said that since Ishbia can't, throw a couple $100 million or $1 billion, at the Lions, he's throwing $95 million at, to East Lansing to keep their coach. this is where you're at right now. Now, you can spend. I mean, I'm not talking about, giving Damani Jackson $5 million, but I'm talking about, this is the way it's played now. And I just, as much as Gary Danielson says it's time and he has a feeling, I have a feeling here that Michigan, with all the things that Harbaugh did with the satellite camps and going abroad and the signing with the Stars, every little area that he could go to, it feels like this is the week that's something. Go out there and with Damani Jackson, and get the win. That would be great. And then deliver Damani Jackson. And then also, this new and exciting network where these players can come in and, they can make as much money at Michigan as anywhere, maybe more than anywhere in the country, because what Michigan has up their sleeve. Now, those are all the things that I'm hoping for. I don't know if any of them are going to happen, but that's the hope heading into this Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you're definitely hoping that this is something that Michigan capitalizes on. I mean, there's never been a doubt in the world that Michigan has the resources to compete at a national level with the guys, with the top dogs. Michigan has it. The only separation that Harbaugh's claimed there's ever really been is that the cheaters, right? He used to always say, there's cheating going on and it needs to be policed. And until it does, that's what's separating us from the pack. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing, and that's obviously not the exact quote, but he used to say, that was going on, and he was one of the few that spoke out about it. Well, now it seems like that's going to be erased, that now we're all on this similar playing field. And excuse me for my cat meowing. He's a very vocal fella. His name's Acuna, by the way. So I'm sure you as a baseball guy would understand that name. Like that. Speaking of NIL. So anyway,
I hope the Tigers, I wanted them to trade for him.
Yeah. Oh, I would freak out. So, but anyway, it's one of those things where Michigan's always had the resources. They've never had a lack thereof of resources. This seems to be something where they seem like they believe that they can close the gap here with this NIL business now being, legal, I guess you could say. So it'll be interesting because Josh has reported for us that it's going to be lucrative and it's going to be something that's going to be eye popping. And if it is what it's supposed to be, and Michigan can win or lose Landamani, that's one thing. If they lose in Landamani, that's something crazy going on in NIL. But I do believe that the separator here is like we always say, a win on the football field, which is where these guys are going to end up regardless, on the football field.
Well, look at, Acuna, Carlos Correa, Damani Jackson, a win over Ohio State. I mean, look what we're talking about here. Now, I can go a million different. I said I was going to ask you about some wild cards. Like, we may have talked about a couple of them already, but if somebody was asking you about Saturday's game and saying, hey, what's a wild card? What's a player, a coach, anything that's a wild card in this game? What are you saying?
Mike Hart. I think he's a difference maker. He has been all year for this team. He's completely changed the running style for Michigan's running backs. They're downhill runners. They always have been, but look how much more patient they are, right? The vision. Think about the vision this year in comparison to last. Now here we go. Boom. Great example. Do you remember, I think it was the Ohio State game 2 years ago, 2018. I don't know. Either way, do you remember when Hassan Haskins had this wide open hole on the right side against Ohio State, and he hit the wrong hole? It was a wildcat formation, I believe, and he hit the wrong hole. And there was like a screenshot of him hitting it, and it was against Ohio State. It was a screenshot of him hitting the wrong hole, going to the left instead of the right. The righty was clear as day, and I believe this was 2017 because they were away.
It's got to be 2019, right? Because he's
2019, yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm skipping years here. COVID messed me up, man. I got COVID brain.
The 54-point.
Yeah,
that one.
Yikes. So, you remember the Haskins run where he had this wide open amount of field on the right side and he hit the wrong hole. Do you remember a time this year that Haskins has hit the wrong hole? Because I don't. It's one of those things where Mike Hart's really changed how these running backs play. I mean, even Corum. Last year, Corum, when he took the ball, was a lightning bolt, but he ran way too quick. He'd run right into tackles. These guys are running patient. They're running with really good vision. They're cutting at the right time. They're nearly perfect running backs this year. They really have been. All right. Now, it's a byproduct of the offensive line being really good as well. But a lot of these backs have created some of their own, madness for themselves. I mean, Haskins especially. If he has 5 yards, he has 10 yards. If he has 10 yards, he has 15. That's really been the MO for him this year. And the only difference is there's a new running backs coach, and his name is Mike Hart. Now, when it comes to rivalry games, Michigan lost to Michigan State. Yes, absolutely. And that's true. So it's not like I'm saying Mike Hart's some sort of invigorating all of these things about beating rivals and all that, because Mike Hart did it, right? But I do believe that Mike Hart, who has really made this running back room great, is a guy where we talk about big players making big plays. Well, how about coaches coaching their tails off in big weeks? And this seems like it's one of those weeks for Mike Hart, who's, as we know, is a very passionate guy. And I see that we had Antoine mention that Edwards is the wild card, and I think, yeah, this whole running back room is a wild card. I mean, obviously Michigan's running style is what it's known for. It's its identity. And after last week, it's hard to say Edwards is a wild card after what he did at Maryland, but I do believe he could be an X factor. Absolutely, he could be a guy that takes, like we talked about, a catch out of the backfield and takes it wherever he wants to take it. But either way, I think at the end of the day, Mike Hart has been the wild card all year for this offense. And I think in this game, he's going to be the wild card coach. You mentioned coach. He's a wild card coach, wild card player. I'm happy saying it's Donovan Edwards. I'm also prone to saying it might be Andrell Anthony, who's no stranger to performing on big stages, as we've seen this year. I think he's clearly their best receiver in this current group, with the highest ceiling in this current group. Ronnie Bell's not included in that group. But as far as defensively, I think an X factor is Rod Moore, who's been awesome in coverage. He's been tremendous for this defense and has elevated, I think, to play a better level at the pass game and everything between the hashes. So I think Rod Moore is a guy who can challenge these receivers, maybe to not look. I mean, hey, like I said in the beginning of the show, you're not going to shut out this offense. It's not going to happen. But he can be a guy that forces a field goal on an open field tackle before the marker and forces, the Buckeyes to have to settle for 3 instead of 7. And that's going to be monstrous in this game. Monstrous. Every time you stop this offense to kick a field goal, there should be bottles popped, because it's that important, so it's one of those things where, as far as a wild card goes, I'd have to go Mike Hart. I'm totally fine going with Edwards, but I think Andrell Anthony's a guy to mention. And then Rod Moore was definitively my wild card defensively.
Yeah, I think all those make sense. Brad Hawkins left the game, and Rod Moore had been playing anyways, but they might need Rod Moore in there a lot more, and he could be a huge factor when you're talking about these great wide receivers for Ohio State. So that's a great one as a wild card, because you just don't know exactly what the health is going to be like for the defensive backs. And it's kind of the same thing when you go to Blake Corum. It's been a 1-2 punch all year long with the running game with Corum and Haskins, and now 10 catches for 170 yards and that 77-yarder where he's running away from people. And now you put Edward. That's the ultimate wild card too. So I think you're on top of it when it comes down to that. All right, 117th meeting. Are you making a prediction of this week? Do you want to make one right now? What would you tell the people here about you already said you're feeling like this is going to be a higher scoring game.
Yeah.
In the 30s.
Yeah.
What kind of score are you thinking about?
This game is something where I'm going to be breaking it down in my brain probably throughout the week. And, what I think now might not be what I think Saturday morning. I'm not sure. All I know is this Michigan team is certainly different. I give Jim Harbaugh credit for I've been a guy who I'm not outspoken on Jim Harbaugh like some people, where I just like always, no matter what happens, need to speak out about how he isn't this or that, but I do hold him accountable, and I haven't been a defender or anything, but I'll give him credit this year. He's done a hell of a job. He's a coach of the year candidate legitimately, nationally, and in the conference, right? And he deserves that, and he's earned it. He really looked himself in the mirror this offseason, and he looked at every other staff member, and all these guys really kind of came together and were like, hey, we got to wake up and we got to be Michigan football, right? And that's really what they were talking about doing in the offseason. It's what we heard was happening, and here we are, fast forward, and Michigan's 10-1, and they're again a score away from being 11-0, and they've played a tremendous season. They've bullied the teams they're supposed to bully, and they've won on the road. They fumbled the bag against Michigan State, but here they are with redemption right in the rearview mirror, or not the rearview mirror, looking ahead here on Saturday. So, yeah, this Michigan team's different. It's mentally, physically different. The defense is better than it's been since 2016. The offense is probably the best it's been. So, as far as methodical goes. That being said, Ohio State's got a monster on the other side. They've got a 3-headed monster at receiver, the best receiving core they've had possibly ever. They have a quarterback who's in the Heisman race, similar to how Troy Smith was. They have an offensive line with two pro tackles. Well, I think Zeke was in there too, but as far as quarterbacks go, defensively, they have a really good defensive line, okay linebackers, and really good defensive backs. So it's one of those games where I think this proves to be an instant classic. And all those things being said, Michigan's home field advantage, Michigan's mental difference, those are all true. And I give them credit for a tremendous season. I don't see them winning this game, though. I just can't convince myself to do that. I've looked at everything, but I think it's going to be closer than what people are going to make it out to be. Michigan's 8-2 against the spread this year. The 2 losses against the spread were as favorites, obviously, considering they've only lost 1 game, and they were a favorite in that game. So I think they cover the spread, and I think that the final score is probably going to end up being like a 38-33, 38-32, somewhere in there. I don't know. These 2-point conversions are funky. All I know is if Michigan's got to defend one, it's probably going to go in. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at with it. Like a 38-33 game, 38-34, somewhere in there. I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to be a classic heartbreaker for Michigan. But I think they made progress this year. I think they did. I think win or lose, you took a huge step forward this year because there was one of 2 things that were going to happen for Michigan this year. They were going to go 7-5, and everyone was going to hate their lives with Harbaugh as their head coach, or they were going to do even worse than that. But everyone thought the ceiling was 7-5, 8-4, and here we are, potentially going to a Rose Bowl with a loss here, or a college football playoff, or a Big Ten championship with a win here. So not bad. I'll give them credit for that, but I don't think they're going to win this game.
Well, you'll get castigated on the den. That's forthcoming, but that's all right. You're being honest.
I
always wrap things up with a memorabilia minute, and I do have something here. However, as kind of a theme of the show, I'm going to throw you a curveball and have a wild card for you, because I did see in one of our text threads, our Slacks, that you said that you had bought a piece of cardboard.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking that had to be, some kind of sports card memorabilia. Now, I don't know if you have it there.
Oh, I got some.
Or if you have something else that you could produce for the memorabilia minute here. I don't know. It was within shouting distance here?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds.
You can show us?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It's probably to a fault.
The memorabilia minute. It's whatever. It doesn't have to be worth, I've got a couple pieces of cardboard that I was going to show and a used ticket stub. But this sounds like it's going to be much better than any little measly, broken off ticket that I'm going to be putting up. By the way, on tomorrow's show, we'll be previewing the return of the Michigan basketball team from the desert. They will be at home taking on not Tarleton State. And we'll be previewing that. And also the Angel of the Big House expected to join us here on the digital podcast. Looking forward to that. See what her thoughts are on the 117th meeting. All right. Memorabilia minute. What do you got here? Let's see it.
Okay. So I was thinking about what to bring, and I was like, this guy's just had a pretty big moment. So he's got to sit out 2 games, but he's going to appear here on the memorabilia minute. I got 2 Isaiah Stewart cards. We've got the Isaiah Stewart autographed select.
Wow.
Yep. And then,
and his eyes intact there. You
Yes.
just have that LeBron elbow.
LeBron's not sucker punching him in that one. Nope. And then we've got this Isaiah Stewart blue disco, and this is numbered out of 50. So there are only 50 of these out there. And one of them, the 17th one, is here in Trenton, Michigan, at my house. So yeah, that's gonna be I can do this every week with you, by the way, because I got a bunch of them. But yeah, those are mine for the day. Isaiah Stewart. Beef stew.
Are you going to grade those out, or you just keep them? You're going to keep them forever. You're not looking to flip them.
I'm working on a submission right now. I'm going to send in. Right now, I'm trying to decide if I want to. So PSA, which is like the big grader, they're super backed up because of how many people have sent them in since the hobby kind of took off during quarantine. So I don't know. I was thinking about sending them to SGC, which is like a lesser grader than PSA, like one of the main ones, but lesser one than that, because PSA and Beckett are just impossible to get in right now. But I also don't want to go about it and get like a lesser one for nothing. So I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I just know that right now I have a ton of them that I want to send in, including these 2, probably about 50 I want to send in. But I'm just not sure. It's also a real big investment because you're paying like 20 or 30 a card to get them graded. So it's trying to make sense of if it makes sense to grade them. So I have a few still as. I have a PSA 10 Mahomes. It's not a rookie, but I have a Mahomes. I have a Luis Robert. I have a Bo Bichette. I have a Kobe rookie from Topps Finest, 1996.
Oh,
I got some decent stuff.
yeah, that one sounds pretty decent.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm always stuck with looking through them, and I've got some good ones. But they're I don't want to say beat up, but when you're a pro, the pros look at them and are like, this is a 6. I'm like, a 6 it looks pretty good to me. Well, I'm thinking it's a 9. This is a 9.5. That's a 5.
Oh, jeez.
I'm not spending $20. I just keep it. So, all right. Well, that's good stuff. Thanks for your time, and love the recruiting information. It's coming fast and furious, and hopefully, you do have to work a lot Saturday in asking everybody's reaction about a Michigan victory.
Yeah, I would love to. All right. Thanks for your time. We'll talk Sounds
with you
good.
soon.
All right.
Have a great Thanksgiving.